Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Lots of guest episodes at the moment. And I have a very special guest here. She's actually a previous client of mine, ex-cousin as well. We were related at some point as well, which I just think is really funny. And she has been on quite a journey the past, well, since we've been working together, but especially the last couple months. And we're go into why and have a little chat. But yeah, Alex, if you want to introduce yourself to everyone and tell everyone sort of why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, so yeah, first of all, my name is Alex. I'm 24 years old. And yeah, me and Jamie, we go back a long way, like we pretty much grew up together. And then we sort of like our families like took a little break from each other. So then I got back in contact when Jamie was a coach, well, is a coach, and I wanted to start my own fitness journey. Sorry, my dog in the background. Um, and yeah, and then the past sort of 6 months has been a sort of a massive roller coaster for me. I want to preface this by saying I am a big crybaby, so I really apologize if I cry at some point today.
Don't need to apologize. We like crying. Crying's good.
um, but yeah, I got diagnosed with cancer back in August, which was a massive like bombshell on my life. Um, and it was a huge shock because cancer doesn't run in my family. And for me, I was thinking quite naively, like, I've never smoked. I don't drink like regularly. I drink on occasion or whatever, but and I'm healthy. I go to the gym consistently, thanks to you. Like I go to the gym consistently, I go running, I go swimming. I eat really healthily, I eat balanced, I do all my steps, I do all of this. Like cancer's never going to affect me. And then it did.
Mm.
um, yeah, and that was a huge thing to sort of come to terms with. Just for anybody out there listening, the cancer I have is ovarian germ cell cancer, which is it's not the ovarian cancer, this big scary one that you see on the TV and stuff. I actually have quite a rare cancer, and a rare form of of this type of cancer because apparently I had to be special. Um,
You are special.
but yeah, it is actually apparently very common. Whilst it's a rare cancer, the demographic that it does sort of affect the most are women in their 20s. So yeah, so if any women in your 20s out there, just
Mm.
yeah, it's something that unfortunately, according to the experts that I've been seeing, is unfortunately becoming more common, and it's on the rise, and they don't know why.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And I mean, as well, like, because obviously it's been a process for you to actually get diagnosed as well. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that because you had sort of quote unquote like hormonal issues. You were having issues with like pains and things like that. And obviously, even when we were working together, you would talk about, pains and stuff like that. And it's like, right, like go to the doctors and get yourself checked. And how many times were you sort of told, oh, it's nothing to worry about?
Well, so it all started back in like May of this year. I began to have like really localized, really specific um, discomfort, I would say. Like it was almost like a cramping feeling, but it was only on one side, sort of like where like your ovary would be.
Mm.
Um, and I had this, so I had this cramping, but coupled with that, I had um, extreme nausea to the point where I was taking pregnancy tests because I thought I was pregnant,
Mm.
because I had such strong aversions to food. Um, I mean, sometimes the smell of water or the taste of water would make me gag, like,
Mm.
and I would have really, really bad nausea. Um, so I, first of all, I sort of took pregnancy tests. No, okay, I'm not pregnant. Okay, what could it be? Um, so it took me ages to get a doctor's appointment, as it does in the UK. Um, and I finally got a doctor's appointment. I went to my doctor, told her all of this. A female doctor, so I thought she would be like more understanding. And I did request for a female doctor because I thought that that would help in getting me referred to people who could help. Um, Spoiler alert, it didn't. So she initially sort of examined me by doing an external examination. So what that just means is that she basically prodded and poked where I told her it hurt, um, which actually during the appointment left me in a lot of pain and left me feeling like I was going to throw up.
I
Um,
remember you saying that actually. Now you've said that, I remember us talking that day and you
yeah.
saying how much it hurt and how sick you felt.
Yeah, and I remember it was a struggle. Like, I don't live very far from my doctor's, but it was a struggle walking home because I was in a lot of pain after she had prodded and poked around
Mm.
it and made me feel really, really sick. Um, I actually ended up crying in the doctor's surgery, like in her office while she was doing her typing up. Um, and she basically said to me, "Well, yep, there's definitely something there. I can definitely see that it is causing you some pain." And in my head, I was like, was this to confirm that I wasn't exaggerating or making it up or like what female hysteria or what?
Mm.
It was like she didn't believe me like before I came in. And
Mm.
she did try and sort of put it down to, oh, it's just cramps, period cramps. It's just menstrual cramps. Um, like it's just female things, you know.
Mm.
And I had to really push and put my foot down and say, no, that's not the case here. Um, Before all the women turn off and boo me, menstrual cramps is something I've never experienced. It's just not one of my menstrual symptoms.
And
Sorry. Yeah,
like if something's not right
yeah,
in your body, you know your body. And I wonder if you crying was your body trying to tell you something,
yeah, maybe.
you having that release there and then. I wonder if that was your body like, yeah, help sort of
Yeah.
thing, like
Well,
crying out literally.
yeah, quite literally. Um, and I remember having to really put my foot down and say, it's not menstrual cramps. I've never had menstrual cramps. I've never, it's just not something I experience. Um, I can hear all the women being like, "You bitch."
Well, if you are having really bad period cramps, guys, that's actually not a sign of a healthy period. You really shouldn't have a lot of pain and a lot of bleeding on your period. That usually is an underlying, you know, maybe an underlying health condition, but equally that you're not taking care of yourself as much as you could be. There are some great pages that I'll put below for kind of like hormonal health. And I did an amazing podcast with a lady called Iris. I think you've listened to some of her
I
stuff now
have,
as well,
yeah,
haven't you, Alex? Yeah, because you should not be in excruciating pain on your period. That is an underlying symptom that, something is out of whack within your body. So yeah, if you are having really bad pain, have a look at your sleep, your stress, your nutrition, your exercise, and go from there. Okay. Sorry, carry on, Alex. I had to get that in
that's okay.
there.
Um, no, it's totally true. And so I once she finally sort of she determined, she was like, okay, it's either going to be an ovarian cyst or something to do with your colon because of where it was placed, because it was on the left hand side. Um, so she referred me for an ultrasound, which took over 6 weeks to actually even come through. During that time, the pain was getting worse. It was becoming more frequent as well. So what I noticed was the pain was coming in waves, so it would come in like spikes.
Mm,
Again, very sort of like how our body works hormonally in like cycles, in waves, in ebbs and flows.
mm,
And the pain would come in waves. And at first, back in May, it was coming like it, the peak wasn't too bad, it wasn't too intense. And then the sort of the trough would be quite long, like until another peak. And in that 6 week period before the ultrasound, the peaks were getting more intense and the troughs were more short lived in that they were coming back a lot more frequently. Um, and to the point where I was like having them at work. And people who don't know me, I'm a teacher. So I would be teaching my class and having to hide that I'm having really bad, like ovarian pain. Um, Sometimes it would make it hard to like walk during those times, those intense times, but I would sort of have to like play it off. During that time, I was still going to the gym twice a week. Um, and funnily enough, when I was at the gym, I don't know if it was the endorphins or like, I don't know, whatever it was, but I didn't actually have the pain. So I loved going to the gym because it stopped it for some reason, the pain would stop. Um, so I had my ultrasound and they did an internal as well. And they found that I had at the time, a 7 centimeter cyst. If you're having trouble visualizing that, luckily they told me it was the size of a nectarine on my ovary. Um, and they were really sympathetic towards me. Those ladies were lovely, actually. They were like, "Oh, you poor thing, like how have you gone so long with this on your ovary, like no wonder you're in a lot of pain." But they determined that the results of an ultrasound were inconclusive because obviously it's all in like black and white, so they can't tell specifically if it is a cyst or if it's a abscess or if it's a ectopic or if it's cancer. So they referred me to gynecology at East Surrey, um, which again was like 6 weeks away. So in this time, it was growing and getting worse. The pain was getting worse.
3 months.
Yeah,
3 months.
to the point where I then couldn't go to the gym. Well, I could go to the gym, but I couldn't do some of the exercises I love. Like I couldn't do glute bridges anymore. I couldn't have anything on that area because it was just too tender. Um, and then the day before my appointment on the 20, I remember it so well, on the 28th of July, um, I woke up and I was fine and I got dressed. I went downstairs and then something I did basically uh, twisted the ovary. So because of the weight of this cyst on my ovary, because ovaries dangle
Mm.
within the body.
And they're not
So
big either, your ovaries. They're not big at all.
no, so the weight of this cyst on my ovary basically it eventually twisted my ovary around the wrong way, which was excruciatingly painful because what then happened, as well as the cyst pain, was the cyst, because it was now facing the other way, the cyst was then leaning on my sciatic nerve, so giving me sciatica as well. So I had shooting pains down the front and the back, to the point where an ambulance was called for me. Um, and the ambulance said, take paracetamol, try and walk around. Which so he made me walk around my living room to the point where I actually collapsed in my living room because it was so painful.
Mm.
Um, and then this was a male paramedic, who was mostly focusing on the sciatica aspect of the problem that I was having, even though I had told him time and time again, this is my cyst, and like this is what I know what this is.
Yeah.
Um, and basically he told me, and I do, in his defense, understand why he said this because I do get it. He basically said that there's currently an 8 hour wait in A&E at East Surrey. He said, so I could take you, but considering you've got an appointment for this problem tomorrow, if you can stick it out and wait till tomorrow, that would be better. Um, so I did. Paracetamol, codeine, nothing worked, as it doesn't with these sort of things.
No.
I it was the night from hell where I literally slept on the couch. Like, the only way I can describe it is it was like I was an animal giving birth.
Mm,
Like, I was sort of in an upright kneeling position. Like, that was the only way I sort of had any
mm.
relief.
That'll be
Um,
the nerve as well. Because I had that when I was in labor, and like, oh my God, I can tell you now, Alex, that the sciatic, something pressing on your sciatic nerve that's the most pain I've ever experienced. Probably you've ever experienced. Once Bear moved off the nerve in my back, giving birth was a fucking breeze. Was an absolute fucking breeze. I loved giving birth compared to that nerve. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
I can 100. Yeah, I'm there with you, girl. And yeah, all fours is the only way. I
yeah.
was going to the nurses when they were checking to see how dilated I was. I was like, can I do it in doggy, please? I was like, don't make me go on my back, like
I
bawling my eyes out. It's so fucking
It's
painful.
so painful. My one of my best friends she suffers with sciatica, and I after all of this was done, I texted her and I was like, I really appreciate, like, I completely empathize with you now because I've had sciatica for a brief moment and I never want to meet it again. I never
Yeah,
want to take hands with it again. It's
yeah.
awful. So I woke up the next morning. I had to ask my dad last minute to drive me to the hospital because I couldn't. So
Hmm.
the next day for my appointment, he came. I was in absolute agony. My mum came with me into the hospital. I mean, I had to get a wheelchair, but again, I was in all fours backwards on the wheelchair, like
Oh,
like some sort
bless
of
you.
weirdo. Um, and I went in there and I went up there and they saw how much pain I was in and they said, the department said, "Oh, we're not equipped to deal with how much pain you're in. You should probably go to A&E." At which point I said to this poor nurse, who, she didn't deserve this because she hadn't been there, but I had had such a rough day and like
Mm,
24 hours prior. I just looked her straight in the face and I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
yeah.
I was like, I was told not to go to A&E yesterday and to wait to see you guys, and now you're telling me I should have been at A&E. No, I'm not going anywhere. I want to see the gynecologist.
And I want some
So
fucking codeine and an epidural.
yeah.
Stick it in my
Oh.
back, you bitch.
So she was like, "Let me see what I can do."
Mm.
Um, they they saw me. They did another internal ultrasound there and then. At which point they told me that my cyst had grown to 12 centimeters. So in the 6 weeks that it had been since my ultrasound, it had grown another 5 centimeters.
Fuck.
Um, so she said, "I'm admitting you for emergency surgery today,"
Yeah.
which I was so relieved at because I was like, if I have to, I don't know if I can spend another night in this pain.
Yeah.
Um, and I was the same as you in that, like, they put me on a hospital bed and things like that, and they kept asking me to like lie down on my back, and that was so painful, and I kept crying and
Yeah.
being like, "Can I lie on my side, please? Can
Yeah. Yeah.
I lie
Oh,
on
doggy. Can I be a
my side?"
dog?
I was like, "I don't want to lie on my back."
Oh, it's horrible.
Um, so I had the surgery. It all went well. I mean, um, I was in there overnight just because my body did not like being on anesthetic at all.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, four like tiny, neat scars like on my belly. They removed the cyst and they were like, "Yep, fine, done. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt." Um, and so I left and I didn't think anything of it. They said, "Look, you're not going to need a follow up because it's just keyhole surgery. You'll be up and yourself again in about 2 weeks. You'll be fine.
Mm.
No strenuous exercise until then." Because the first question I asked was like, "When can I go back to the gym? When can I go back running?" Um,
Yeah.
and so they were like, "You're not going to need a follow up." Um, they said that it was a dermoid cyst, which just means it's made up of like skin cells. So there was like skin and hair and things like that in it.
Mm.
And they were like, "So yeah, we confirmed when we pulled it out, it's definitely a dermoid cyst. But we're going to send it off for a biopsy anyway, just as a precautionary measure."
Mhm.
And they said to me, "But we don't think we'll find anything. It's definitely looks like a dermoid cyst."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, great." And I was like, how long will that take to come back? And they were like, oh, about 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, fab. So I went about my life, and I actually went, I went after the 2 weeks were up. I went on a run, and I was so happy and everything. And then they called me one day, and they said, hey, can you come in today? And I was like, oh, what's this regarding? They were like, oh, it's regarding your surgery that you had at the end of July. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm actually not available today. Um, they were like, can you come tomorrow? And I was
Mm.
like, oh, yeah, sure, I can come tomorrow. So I had arranged to come tomorrow. And at this point, like, alarm bells were kind of going off in my head.
Mm.
And I sort of told my friends and family, and they were like, no, 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 like, it's just going to be a follow up. Like, don't worry about it. They said it was a dermoid cyst. Don't worry. And then I called my mum, who was there with me when I woke up from surgery. And she said, I don't want to alarm you, but when you were kind of out of it, then the woman did say that you won't need a follow up. This isn't a follow up.
Mm.
She said, have you had your biopsy results back yet? And I said, I haven't, no. And she was like, okay. And I was thinking, yeah, for the NHS to ask me to come in same day, have an appointment same day, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So the next day, but everybody had kind of convinced me that it was going to be fine.
Mm.
And then the next day, it was the 18th of August, and me and my boyfriend went back to gynecology at East Surrey, and they just handed me a green Macmillan card, and I
Oh.
knew I knew what that meant.
Mm.
And they said, unfortunately, we did find within the cyst were cancer cells.
Mm.
So for anybody who's remotely interested, so what I had, another name for a dermoid cyst is a mature teratoma, which is it's just another name for it. It basically just means it's a benign tumor. That's all that cysts are. They're just benign tumors.
Mm.
And basically within the mature teratoma, inside were some immature teratoma cells, which is cancer. Those are the malignant cells.
Mm.
Um, and basically, so they were encased within the cyst, which I think is really interesting, because it's almost like, as much as it was the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life, if I hadn't have had the cyst turn, etc., on that day, hadn't been in that pain, hadn't got that removed, how much would that have festered? It's almost like,
Mm.
my sister said, what if your body made the cyst to protect you, like
Yeah.
and to um, you know, to trap the cancer. Basically, it was like your body's way of fighting it.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a blessing in disguise.
Mm.
Because without the cyst, that we wouldn't have caught it as early as we did by any means.
Mm.
Um, so essentially, the East Surrey were like, you've got ovarian germ cell cancer, which is a rare type of cancer that we have no idea how to deal with.
Mm.
Um, so we're sending you to the experts. So I've been, for the past 3 months, I've been being treated at Charing Cross Hospital in London. So it's been a lot to make the journeys all the time, but worth it to be in the best possible hands.
Mm.
And they've been amazing. Um, and I had to have chemotherapy. Luckily, I was only stage 1. Um, so that was really positive, because that obviously improves your sort of survival rate and things like that.
Mm.
There is a 90% survival rate and cure rate, essentially, with this cancer, with the chemotherapy that I'm on. What Isari didn't tell me is that during the surgery, the cyst actually split. and so essentially the cells from inside, like it bled basically when during the surgery,
Um,
which is why I had to have chemotherapy, because they found cancerous cells inside, and then if it bled during the surgery, those cells
Bread.
could spread and go into my system.
Yeah.
They wanted to stop that from happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my story basically.
Yeah. And it's been, I remember like the messages as well. Like I remember it so clearly, you being like, by the way, I'm going into emergency surgery. I'm out of emergency surgery. The cyst was 12 centimeters long, or 12 centimeters big. And then, like a couple weeks or however long later, it was like, I've actually got like ovarian cancer. And I remember just being like, if I was on a walk as well, like I was on a walk when I read that message, and I was just like, fuck. But I knew you were going to be fine. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I was like, fuck, but she's going to be fine, you know?
Mm.
And I remember like, I can't remember if I said it. I think I said it to you, and I'm like, I think I sent you a voice note, and I was just like, just take some time and decompress. But how, what was your initial reaction? Like, obviously, you got given the green letter. What was your sort of initial reaction when you got like diagnosed? Like, how did that sort of feel?
Um, I think the best way I can describe it is like, in movies when something dramatic happens and there's like a big like boom, like music in
Mm,
the background. It felt like that was happening.
yeah.
Um, and like I said, I'm a crybaby, so I just broke down into tears, and I was like, it was just a lot to take in.
Mm,
Um, so I was really upset. Then like sort of wiped the tears away and was like really logical and was like, so what does this mean? Blah blah
yeah.
blah, etc. Um, and then just pure panic, like walls, like panic attack, like walls start closing in, getting really hot. Like I basically just I ran out of there. Like
Mm,
they were lovely, and they were like, can we get you a cup of tea? And they were fussing over me, and that just made me feel suffocated.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can imagine
Um, yeah, absolutely. And so I was just like, I need to get out of here.
that. Mm,
I think my initial reaction was just so shocked, because I never thought cancer would happen to me.
mm,
And that's been something that's been a bit of a struggle, because, I think everybody who gets cancer thinks, why me?
mm,
But I think for me, it was like I felt really hard done by. I felt really cheated by the universe,
mm,
whatever you believe in. Like, it was sort of like, why me? Like,
mm,
and especially, and I love my partner to death, but especially when like he's been a smoker for, he's not anymore, but from the ages of about 16 to 25, he's he was a smoker. Cancer runs in his family, and he was the one I was with when I was told. And I kind of, for a split second, looked at him and was like, I always thought this conversation would be about you.
mm,
How is it that this has happened to me?
yeah.
And that was really, really hard. And I felt, I don't wish cancer upon anybody
Mm,
at all. Um, but there was this feeling of being really hard done by and feeling sorry for myself initially.
mm,
Um, I think that period was very difficult, because I asked them at the time at East Surrey, so, okay, what grade, what stage is it at? Are we talking we've caught it really early, or are we talking I've got 6 months to live?
yeah.
What's the deal? And they couldn't tell me, they didn't know.
Yeah.
And so they said Charing Cross will do that. But my
Mm,
appointment with Charing Cross wasn't until over 2 weeks away. So there was a 2 week period of being in limbo. And
mm,
the only way I can describe it, it was like I was stumbling around in the dark,
yeah.
like just this fog of like, I've got cancer, but I have no idea like, is it getting worse in this 2 week period? Like, what's going on? I don't know how bad it is, how bad it's going to be. Because it's ovarian, am I going to be able to have children?
Mm,
And I didn't have any answers. I left with more questions than I had answers.
mm.
Um, and I kind of went through like the stages of grief.
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
Um, I mean, initially, like the day of my cancer diagnosis, at first I was like complete depression, like complete shut down, numb, withdrawn, cry my eyes out, very like dissociating a lot. And I told my parents, and I got to my parents' house, and we kind of talked it through, right? Logic, like what are the next steps? What exactly did they say? And then the day of my cancer diagnosis, I was making jokes about it.
Mm,
I was using humor.
mm.
My family found that really hard because
Yeah.
they were really suffering, like, and they were really um they were really shocked by it and really upset by it. And I was there sitting making jokes about it,
Mm,
but that was the way I was coping.
yeah. Yeah.
And everybody sort of said to me, don't read up on anything, don't read any of the leaflets and things like that because you're going to scare yourself. um but actually, weirdly, because I didn't know a stage, or like I didn't have anything to relate to me, so that was kind of like my denial phase, not denying that I have cancer, but it was like I could read up about stage 4 and people dying and it spread into their lungs and their brain and da da da, and not be scared because it was like, well, that I was very detached from it. So I
Yeah.
was like, that doesn't relate to me. But even stage 1, where it was like, oh, it's just there and it can be very treated by this, I was like, well, that doesn't relate to me either because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have. So I was just sort of mindlessly like gathering facts on just a random topic. So it was
Yeah.
complete denial. And then a few days later, it kind of hit me when we were talking about going to a fertility specialist because I might not be able to have children and it will affect my fertility and things like that. And that really, really hit me. And then I was in bits because it was like, how am I 24 talking about having to freeze my eggs
Mm,
because I'm not be able to have children, and equally maybe not having time to freeze my eggs because they want to start chemotherapy on Monday.
mm,
So and being a mum has like is something that has been so important to me for my entire life.
mm,
So yeah, I kind of went through like these this stages of grief.
mm,
And then finally I was told what stage. And then all of that research I did, I could actually relate to something. And then my entire mindset shifted of like, now I know my enemy.
mm.
Let's beat it.
Now let's fuck them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'll never forget, like, and I was having this conversation with a client of mine the other day actually, and I was saying I didn't give like personal details obviously, but this is Alex. And I was saying I was like we were talking about health and how, health really is wealth. And I told her about that conversation we had like after I think it must have been, after you had been told your stage, because then we had a chat on the phone and we sort of spoke about, what was happening. And you were just so like positive, and you were just so like, right, this is what it is. It's really treatable. I start chemo. This is the chemo. La 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 la. We've got this.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget you saying like, if there was a time for you to get cancer, it would be now.
Yeah.
And I just think it's such like this is where, the power of your mind and, that resilience, comes into play because, and we had this conversation of, your body will do what your mind tells it. You were telling yourself, like, I'm going to get over this. I'm going to be fit. I'm going to be healthy. And, it really does change your experience of it, you know? Um, and what sort of, what sort of shifted in you for you to kind of because ultimately, what happened is, you accepted, you were like, right, this is it, this is the process, like, let's go. What was that kind of shift for you?
I think it was a combination of two different things. So first of all, um, I'm a big believer in manifestation, and I wasn't until the beginning of this year. I sort of set myself a New Year's resolution that for January, for 30 days, every day, I would wake up and do manifestations,
Mm.
um, just to try it out. And shit started happening. Like, and I can't. If you've never tried manifestation, just commit yourself to 30 days.
Mm.
It doesn't take long. You can find loads of shit on Spotify that you can just like do it, like go along with. You can do it at night or in the morning or both. But shit started happening. Like I
Mm.
would listen to manifestation stuff, and not just in myself, but shit started gravitating towards me. And whether that's the universe or God or spirits or just you putting out positive energy, or your own mind, the power of your own mind, whatever power it may be, I found it worked. And so I found that speaking things out loud, shit comes true. So I so there was part of that, and I was thinking back to when I did manifestation, sort of much more frequently, which I really need to get back to. But
You've been busy, babes. Don't worry.
so, so I was thinking about that, and I was like, right, shit started happening, like even down to like money. So like
Mm.
I would say things, and then all of a sudden there would be like, oh, I got a random refund I wasn't expecting, or like, oh, look at that. Oh, I've got extra money like that I wasn't expecting. Oh, look at that. Oh my, I've been moved up a band on my salary. Wow, that's amazing.
Mm.
So, and I was like, okay, so if I put out into the universe that I'm gonna survive and that I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna get over it, and that I'm only gonna need 3 rounds, and
Mm.
that I'm not gonna have bad symptoms, then it will happen. And you've got to believe it, like it will happen. So there was the manifestation side of it, but also I've suffered from like anxiety, depression, things like that my entire life. And anybody who does have mental health issues knows that there are such physical manifestations of those symptoms. I mean, take when you have a panic attack, you don't just have everything going on in your mind, like, but your chest gets tight, your breathing gets faster, you might start to sweat, etc. You get these physical symptoms of it in your body, because the body follows the mind. So because your mind is racing, therefore your chest starts getting tight, for example. But it doesn't always have to be negative. So I figured, if I want to fight this, if I want my body to be in the best situation to be able to fight this fucker off, and basically to get rid and make my body the most inhospitable environment ever for this cancer, then my mind's got to be in tip top. My
Mm.
mind has got and that doesn't mean like I have to be really smart or whatever, but it means like my mindset has got to be on its A game. I have got
Mm.
to remain positive,
Yeah.
because as soon as you get into that negative slump, your body's going to get into that negative slump, and then that's where the cancer thrives.
Mm.
So it was this, right, I've got to be positive so that my body can fight,
Mm.
and I've got to put it out into the universe so that that comes back to me.
Mm.
That was that mindset shift, and I just knew I had to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I'm sure you've probably seen recently, I can't remember her name, but that lady who was 35 and she died of ovarian cancer, but it was like that big scandal where a lot of women didn't get diagnosed. So
Mm.
she got diagnosed very late, and I'll have to find her and I'll share. Do you know who I'm talking about, Alex? Oh, I'll show you her. She died recently, unfortunately, but like she she fucking lived. Like she fucking lived. And again, that is the mindset shift. Like I think they gave her like, and again, don't quote me because I might be wrong, but they didn't give her a very long time to live because it was so early on. She's a mum of two, and she was like, I'm gonna fucking live. And she outdid the prognosis by a lot. Like I think they gave her a few months and she's been fighting this for a couple years. No Cure knew that, ultimately, it was gonna end her life, but she lived her life,
Yeah.
and she could have very easily, you know, fallen into, you know, that, oh, I'm gonna die and I should just, everything's awful and negative, but she decided not to,
Yeah.
and it is a choice, it is a choice. And I'm not saying it's fucking easy. I'm sure there were days, Alex, even when you kind of, committed to, right, I'm gonna, be positive and I'm gonna look at the positives, I'm gonna look at the lessons, and I'm gonna, take this with me. I'm
Yeah.
sure there were still days where you were probably just fucking crying and thought, why the fuck is this happening to me?
Of course, and like that's what I was just gonna say actually. Like, it doesn't, just because I was positive doesn't mean that I was a fucking ray of sunshine all the time. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I haven't like cried about my diagnosis over and over again.
Mm,
Doesn't mean that I don't still feel hard done by,
yeah.
but it just means that when I've stopped crying, when I've had that emotional release, I wipe my tears and I go, okay, now fight, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other way to describe it. And weirdly enough, I thought being on a cancer ward would, when I went for chemotherapy, would be so doom and gloom, and like everybody would be crying and family members
Mm,
would be crying, and you know people would be dying and things like that. Being on a cancer ward is one of the most positive places in the world because
yeah.
you have to be.
Yeah.
And I've met some amazing people with some, in much worse predicaments than I'm in. But
Mm,
I've met some amazing people who just, like, we made each other laugh, and like we had fun on a
yeah.
on the ward and things like that. And because you've got to keep smiling, you've got to be positive.
Mm,
um Otherwise you're going to run your body in the ground, because your body follows your mind.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, there are a lot of studies out there where people have, been given a prognosis of you're gonna die, and they basically say, no, I'm fucking not. And they fight it and they're like, you're miraculously cured. And it's like, the mind is so fucking powerful,
Yeah.
like, and what you said earlier, it's like, the mind and the body are connected. Like, absolutely, and it goes both ways. Your physiology affects your psychology affects your physiology, and obviously you had been working on both your mind and body for a good couple years before you got your cancer diagnosis. So how did that change things for you?
Well, I think it's like what you said, that you said to your other client, of I've been working on my mindset and my body with you for years, um, and really doing that and committing to doing that work on myself. Um, so whilst it'd be great if I didn't have cancer at all, but um, equally, if there was a time for me to get cancer, now was the best time, because I had done that work.
Mm,
Whereas if I had gotten cancer a year or two before that, I wouldn't have been, as consistent with my food and the gym and everything like that. My body wouldn't have been in good enough condition. I wouldn't have had the knowledge either to know what to do, when movement's limited, about how to recuperate and things like that.
mm,
Um, and equally, I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have been able to be so positive and have and be open to such a change in mindset, um, and do that reflection.
Mm,
Um, so actually being so strong of mind and body at that point, due to the work that we had done, um, actually it was like I'm in a really good position to fight this. And that's not saying that people who have just started their fitness journey like wouldn't have been,
mm,
like won't be in a good position to fight anything like that. It was more about being open to change,
mm,
and being resilient to change as well, because no one likes change,
yeah,
but it's about like that old saying of getting back up on the horse
yeah,
and being like, okay, this is the situation now.
mm,
So this is what I've got to do.
yeah. And also as well, I wonder if you would have pushed as much for, getting a diagnosis, because this is one of the things I see a lot in, a lot of women I work with is this kind of initially when we start working together is this lack of like advocacy for themselves and this kind of like disconnection from their own body, because for a lot of women, so many years you're told, people know your body better than you. People say, people rely on, and I'm not saying obviously don't like, I'm saying go to the doctors, but also if you don't feel something's right and a doctor tells you you're fine,
Yeah.
no, 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 because you know your body, and I've had, so many clients, especially with hormonal issues, like this is a massive, massive, like female health is still massively fucking, underdone, especially like hormones and, the pill is not the solution to your hormonal problems, ladies. If you've got hormonal issues and your doctor tries to give you a fucking pill or changes your contraception, fucking run, because that's not the answer.
I did doing research, and in my stages of grief, I desperately tried to find something to blame for my cancer, because
Interesting.
it was really hard to just to try and accept that it's just bad luck.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
um, and in doing this research, and I'm not saying, by the way, I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying that this actually caused my cancer. There's no, the doctors have said that it is just bad luck. It's just random. But
Do you
I
believe that?
I've been on the pill for 7 years straight. I've never had a break. I've never ever even missed a day. Um, and until now. Um,
Will
and
you be going back on the pill?
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Um, but I found out that the World Health Organization um, deems hormonal contraceptives as being a level 1 carcinogen.
Yep. And you can find that information everywhere, guys, but we just don't look because we think, oh, if the doctor's giving it to us, it's good for us,
Yeah,
you know?
and it begs the question. It makes me think: did being on the pill for so long,
Mm,
did that give me cancer? And whilst again, I'm not saying it did,
mm,
because there's no evidence for it. Um, but it makes me scared to go back on it.
mm, mm.
And so, I mean, the doctors said to, like, when I started chemotherapy, that the chemo would make the pill completely useless anyway. Um, so you may as well come off it. So for during this whole experience, whilst also having a hormonal experience because it's on my ovaries, so it's affecting all my
Yeah.
hormones anyway, I then had to contend with this major shift in my life hormonally, of coming off the pill
Mm,
first time in 7 years,
yeah.
and trying to get my body to have its own natural hormonal rhythm,
Mm,
um, which has been a bit mental.
mm,
Um, Initially, when I came off the pill, the first thing that happened was acne everywhere, like I was a teenager again, all
mm,
over my face, but also all over my back, like
mm,
everywhere. Um, and then um, a lot of like nausea and things like that. But again, that was to do with the chemo.
Yeah.
Now the chemo makes my body think that um, it's in menopause.
Mm.
It's only temporary, but it's like my body spent 7 years being scammed into thinking it's pregnant for
Mm.
7 years. And now it's being scammed into thinking it's menopausal.
Mm.
So I've had to deal with like hot flushes,
Yeah.
night sweats, um, again, like nausea, things like that, joint aches, muscle aches. Um, and it's been a nightmare. I mean, I know the menopause is like a hot topic at the moment, um,
Mm.
on the news and things like that. And menopausal women, I salute you,
Mm.
because those hot flushes are something else.
Yeah.
Something else. I mean, it's really cold at the moment, and I'm going out in like a t-shirt and a light cardigan, and I'm just like, oh, it's a nice breeze.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like how, well, I absolutely love hormones, and there are so many. Like, I've got loads of clients now who have gone on their journey of, coming off of contraception. And again, like, you've got to do what's best for you, 100%, but you can't deny the health benefits of your body being able to actually cycle and actually do what it needs to do, like, and I spoke about this on another podcast episode, but I was late on my period for the first time in years, like a couple months ago. And the feeling of disconnect I had with my body was really strange. And it just, again, it's one of those things where like you don't know what you have until it's gone, or until you lose it. Because I was walking down the street and I was like, I can't hear my body. And I know that sounds really weird, but I was like, I can't hear her. I was like, I can't hear her. And I realized that for the past like 3 years, I've had it in a dialogue with my body every single day where I can listen to her and I'm like, how are we feeling? And, there's obviously two major times where, her voice gets really loud. And that's, usually before my period or usually before I'm ovulating. Like, I know. And I did a whole podcast episode of this. So if anyone's interested in that, like, go back and listen. But it's so nice to feel connected to my body again after having like had a late period. But the hormones and stuff and navigating that is challenging. But like, one thing I would say is like, get knowledgeable ladies, because so many, I mean, there are ladies I speak to in their 30s that still don't know you can't get pregnant every day. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on in the education system and in the healthcare system where women don't understand that they're only fertile at like 5 days within a month? It's really, really fucking frustrating. So please, like, ladies, like, learn about your body and your body.
Yeah,
It really
knowledge
is
is
what it is.
power, and I think knowledge is absolutely power. And I think like if they're not going to do the research, do your own research. Like
Mm,
if they're not going to learn about women's bodies and how they work, then you learn. Take the power into your own hands.
yeah.
And honestly, when I was getting my diagnosis, I I think part of me was putting my foot down just almost as a point of feminism, of of
Yeah.
of like, no, you're not going to turn me away. You are going to take me seriously because I know she's telling me something's wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and funnily enough, it was that whole disconnect you were saying about, well, like being disconnected with your body, has been a big thing like during the chemotherapy and stuff, because there's been
Mm,
so many changes.
yeah.
Um, like there's been goods and bads. I remember um, during round two, I was after I finished round two, I was FaceTiming my friends, and one of my friends, like I was saying about how this time around, weirdly, the symptoms that I had first time, so I really struggled with like a lot of acid reflux. I struggled with a lot of constipation, TMI, sorry, not sorry.
Never TMI. We all have butts.
I
We all have butts
I
and poop.
I struggled with fluid retention and things like that, and they have to pump you full of fluids during the chemo. And then the second time round, I still struggled with those things, but like for example, the acid reflux wasn't as bad, or like the pain wasn't as bad, and I was able to clear it a lot easier. The constipation went after like a day, and then my body was regular again,
Mm.
and the the actual like the water retention wasn't as bad as well. And actually, I went down in weight towards the end of the week. So my body was getting rid of it. It was
Mm.
flushing it out.
Yeah.
And my friend Chloe said to me, she said, "Isn't that so cool how like your body remembers and like adapts?
Yeah.
Like remembers it from when you were there 3 weeks ago. It knows the routine. It knows what's happening to it this time round.
Mm.
And so it's sorting its shit out. Like it's sorting itself out." And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, that's a really cool way to think about it. Of like, just after one round of chemo, my body second time round has gone, okay, we know the drill. So we know we need to bump up the kidneys, we need to bump up the liver, we need to
Yeah.
make sure that we're getting rid of that fluid more. And she just knew what to do. She was like, don't worry, Alex, we got this. We know the drill.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
That was really like amazing. And I think then coming home on the flip side, losing my hair and seeing seeing obviously a lot more like water retention because of the fluids and things, and it's not fat, it's not weight gain in terms of fat gain.
Mm.
And I've learned that from you.
Yeah.
We're very quick to use this word, oh, I look fat, and it's like I've gained so much weight. It's like you haven't gained fat, you might be that you've gained water, haven't slept well, etc.,
Your
etc.
body's literally fighting something, the
Yeah,
stress that your body goes through, even just
yeah,
having chemo, because chemo is obviously, it's aggressive, so you're and obviously I saw like Bear's dad obviously had chemo when we were very young, so I remember the water retention and watching his body and him change, so yeah, it's a necessary byproduct, isn't it?
yeah. And that was I remember looking in the mirror, and I still sometimes look in the mirror, and I it's very strange to have that disconnect with your body and to
Mm.
look in the mirror and not recognize yourself.
Mm.
uh, so I remember when my wig came, I from the Little Princess Trust, shout out to them, they're amazing. um they when I had I put my wig on for the first time, and I looked in the mirror, I absolutely sobbed my eyes out because there was finally this connect again with my body, and it was like, I know you, like I
Mm.
recognize you, I know her, that woman in the mirror staring back at me, I know her.
Mm.
um, and that was because there had been this disconnect for such a long time, like showering and catching a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and just being like, I don't know who that is,
Yeah.
seeing like your fluid, puffy, filled
Mm.
face and be like, I don't know who this bald bitch is staring back at me. um, and then
You've got a great shaped head to be bald.
you know what? Lots of people have said that to me.
You
So
do. You suit bald. You do.
um, and then I started going to therapy. I listened to your most recent podcast, and I know you're starting therapy soon.
Mm.
I definitely think whilst you can be positive and still need therapy, uh,
Mm.
and it's been really helpful, just giving me some exercises to do. Um, and one thing I did is for the first time in a long time, I stood completely naked in front of my mirror, front on, not just like side eyeing myself as I'm getting dressed.
Mm.
And I just was kind to my body. Like I just, again, with that manifesting, like I just said nice things about my body out loud. And it wasn't anything to do with aesthetics. It wasn't like, wow, you're so skinny, you're so beautiful, I like your eyes. It was none of that. It was, thank you for getting me through this. Thank
Mm.
you for being so strong. Thank you for
Mm.
everything you've done for me. Thank you for carrying me on my own 2 feet every day. You
Mm.
know, thank you for any future children you might give me and you might carry for me.
Mm,
And all of those words, I tried to focus on the bits of my body that I maybe don't like as much, especially at
yeah.
the moment. Um, my belly that still has like my scars from my surgery and things.
Mm,
Um, my face that's gotten really puffy and things like that. And that I found it really powerful and really calming and
mm,
really uplifting. And I felt so in tune with my body during
mm,
that moment.
mm. Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do, but I really recommend it for anybody.
Yeah. Because, we're not our bodies, they are our vessels, and you have to take care of them, because, like Alex has, shown here having, had fucking cancer, guys. Do you know what I mean? Had fucking cancer. Her body has seen her body and her mind has seen her through, and, regardless of how, you may look right now or feel, it's like this got me there. It's the only thing I can sort of compare it to is like after you have a baby, because obviously after you have a baby, like I remember like when Bear was put on me, when I gave birth to him and then they took him off, my stomach was synced in one side where he was laying. And my stomach after, like, no one really prepares you for like your body after a baby. Like, there's so many things that happen that you just you're never told. But I remember like taking some progress pictures that I've shared on like social media and everything. And I remember like looking at my body. And I remember as well, like, Bear's dad was like, "Oh, you don't want to see these." And I was like, "Bitch, like, bitch, fuck you. Like, fuck you. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Like, let me see
I
my
don't want to see
body."
you. I don't want to see you.
Yeah, yeah. Now we know he's toxic, guys. It's fine. But yeah, like, and I remember looking at the pictures of myself and I was just like you said, I was like, whoa, like that, and it wasn't even like the fact that my stomach was bigger and my face was again lots of water retention, but like my boobs as well, like my nipples changed as well, and like my nipples were really big and they were dark, and I was just like, oh, like, okay, like that's me, right? But I've had to look like this to have my baby, and like you've had to go through this in order for you to beat cancer and for you to, continue, living your life, and now living your life with another chapter in your story, you
Yeah,
know? And I always think like when you go through challenges, whatever challenge that may be, there is always an opportunity to turn that into your strength,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I think when I was younger, people would, say, "Oh, who's the strongest person you know?" And I used to say, people like celebrity, like Martin Luther King, or
Mm,
or friends or family, or and being strong doesn't mean you had to go through hardship,
mm,
but being strong means you've had to how you've handled things.
mm,
And now, and maybe this is just playing into my narcissism, I don't know, but now, if somebody said, "Who's the strongest person you know?" It's like, bitch, I am.
yes.
I am.
Let's have a clap for that, because I honestly think like, because I think it's that kind of level of self-confidence and self-belief is fucking needed,
Yeah,
like 100%.
yeah. And it's not like a competition of who's had the most trauma or been like, yeah, I've been through this.
Mm,
It's actually it's yeah, okay, I went through that, and I went through it with a fucking smile on my face.
mm,
Or, yeah, I did this, but and yeah, I fell down in the dirt, but I grabbed that dirt and I put it under my eyes and I
mm,
fucking kept going. And so yeah, I'm the strongest person I know, and And I give myself credit for that.
Mm, fucking yeah. 100%. 100%. What's something that challenged you throughout this whole kind of experience that you wasn't expecting? Like, what was something that was quite surprising?
Um, I think my something that I really wasn't expecting was kind of the cynicism and resentment I felt towards people praising me for being strong, weirdly.
Mm.
So
I assume you're
people,
talking about that in therapy.
yeah. um, um, yeah, my like friends and family going, "Wow, you're so strong," and I've just off the back of me saying I'm the strongest person I know and being proud to say it, but at first, everybody saying, "Wow, you're so brave," there was this massive resentment of me going, "No, no, no. Bravery is where you know the danger you're facing and you choose to face it anyway."
Mm,
Like nurses are brave, firefighters are brave, you know, people who go into the army and go into soldiers are brave. They know the danger that they're facing, they know the potential risks, and they go into it anyway. And I always at first was very much like, well, I didn't choose this. So I'm not
mm,
brave, I'm stuck with it. Like
mm,
I'm not, don't stop calling me brave. I don't deserve to have that title. I'm not on the same level as these other
mm,
professions and these people who face these things every day because I didn't choose this,
mm,
you know? But whilst I didn't choose this, I chose how I reacted to it. I
mhm,
chose I chose the path that I was going to take. I
mm,
chose to have chemotherapy because no one forced me to. I could have just been like, no, I don't want to do that and gone on living my life.
mm,
Um, so and I chose to do it. I chose to do it in London, which is a long way away. I chose to be positive about it. So I
mm,
sort of came away from that. But every time somebody would say, "You're so brave," or "You're handling this so well," or "Wow, you're so inspiring," or something like that, those compliments didn't sit well with me and at first.
mm.
And I was, because I didn't feel deserving.
Yeah. How are they sitting now?
Great.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I am brave. I am strong. And I mean, inspiring, I could get there. Don't know about that. But yeah, I think I've earned those.
Mm,
Um, and I think something else that shocked me was something that I thought was healed, something that I thought was not part of me anymore, and that was complete like a separate chapter in my life. Um, my eating disorder, or the views and the core beliefs, the values that I had formed whilst having my eating disorder, um, reared its ugly head,
mm,
um, with all the water retention. And, I felt like all of the years of hard work of fitness and things like that I had done were a waste
mm.
because I'd gained it all back through no fault of my own. Um, because of the nausea, and weirdly, fun fact, chemotherapy taste changes your taste buds.
Yeah, it does.
So because of that and the nausea and things like that, I was eating a very different diet.
Mm,
Um, I couldn't stand meat or anything like that for a long
mm,
time. Um, and I couldn't physically, and on strict doctor's orders, but also physically, I couldn't handle and still can't handle exercise in the way I used to whatsoever. I mean, at the moment, I'm having heart rate issues as a result of the chemotherapy, and my heart rate resting is sitting at like 120 beats per minute. So
that's exhausting as well. Like your body's pretty much in like fight flight. So I'm not surprised you're, needing to just rest.
Yeah, so fatigue is a massive thing as well with it. And so not being able to control the water retention or the gained weight through exercise or food, and have the those core beliefs of if you gain weight, you're not going to be loved, you're not worthy of love, or if you've lost all your progress and look how ugly you are now, this is going to take so many years to work off and things like that. That really shocked me because I thought that it's never going to come back.
Mm,
And whilst I am in therapy working on it, I've found that a lot of my anxieties and things have been tied into my previous eating disorder. That really shocked me.
mm, mm,
And I mean, little things like, because of my heart rate, even at home, um, you know, I'm I'll almost use that as an excuse,
mm,
like my anxiety as an excuse of oh, don't go downstairs to make yourself some food, because then you have to go back upstairs, and you know how stairs make your heart rate, and you
mm,
don't want to raise your heart rate too much because you could die.
mm,
So then it's like, okay, well, I won't go and make myself some food then.
mm.
And that's been very hard to navigate. But I am working with a eating disorder specialist therapist.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
she's been great. She has been great.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you feel like you have kind of tools and stuff to navigate through that? Because that's the thing as well, is it's like, I think people think, when you've kind of gone on a journey, or even when you've like you say, quote unquote, healed something, I think people then assume that it's never going to come back.
Yeah.
And that, I can tell you as well, like and it can come back in different ways,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It's
Um,
completely different to last time.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing as well. But like you said, it comes down to, your core beliefs. And what you've got to remember as well, Alex, is you're going through something that you've never gone through.
Yeah.
This is like a whole other level of being challenged, of who you are in essence being challenged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so great that you've actually took the initiative to get yourself the help and support you need, because I think it's very easy. And I'm very like, I can very much sympathize. I'm a very sympathetic person, but I am not someone who will validate your excuses. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not someone who will continue to validate you feeling shit but not actually doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I might get a little bit of hate for saying that, or that might trigger someone, but it's true. If you focus on the problems, you're wasting your energy. Like, focus on the solutions. If you're being faced with a challenge right now, what is the solution? It takes 2 seconds to, like you, Alex, right? Okay, I'm having intrusive thoughts about, my body image, and, I'm being challenged in a way that I've never been challenged before. And, and also like probably your relationships with people as well, and your relationships to training, your relationships to exercise, your relationships to a lot of things are being
Totally.
challenged in a way they've never been challenged before. And it's like, okay, this is my problem. What's the solution? And there's going to be other, like, I'm sure there's lots of things you're doing, lots of tools and modalities that you're using, but it's like, okay, one solution is going to therapy, is committing to, telling people how I feel instead of harboring it, is, taking care of my body, actively choosing different, because we all have these defaults. We all have these default thoughts or behaviors, like you thinking, right, well, if I don't go, don't go downstairs and make food, because then I'm going to be really tired when I get up. You're like, oh, okay, that's come out. Now let's take a step back and
Yeah.
let's observe where that voice comes from. Is that coming from me, or is that coming from, the eating disorder?
Yeah.
And then you can step in take your power back and say, I'm going to text my mum to make me some food, or I will go downstairs and make myself some food, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's what I mean about like I'm glad I'm not glad I've got cancer, but you know, cancer couldn't have happened to me at a better time in my life. I'd rather it happened to me when I was young and fit and in this mindset than
Mm,
any time else, because actually working with you, listening to your lives on Facebook and things like that, and you know, that whole, I think it's more of an openness to change, because
mm,
everybody has these core beliefs and these defaults and these comfort zones that we're so used to and we're so familiar with. But it's just sort of thinking, okay, well, what if that wasn't true? Or what
mm.
if there's a better way? Let's just hear what she has to say. Let's just humor her. Just here we go. Let's just listen,
Yeah,
exercise. Let's do the exercise. And you
yeah.
find something out about yourself.
Mm,
I actually I brought it up to one of the charities that's on site um, at the hospital, and they're an organisation called Maggie's. They're amazing. They're for cancer patients and their families. They do have a website if you want to look them up. Um, but the woman who runs it, she was amazing, and I sort of said, look, I'm having these concerns, do you have anybody here who could help? I know you've got therapists here who help. Do you have anybody who has an eating disorder specialist? Because they were having to, as part of the treatment and as part of the medical side of it, to keep me safe, they were having to weigh me twice a day,
mm.
and
Which
they
is
were,
quite triggering.
yeah, very triggering. And I found at first they were telling me what the number was, and I was getting obsessed with how much it was going up in such a
Mm,
short time. And then it moved on to me asking them what the number was
yeah.
time. And I sort of noticed that, and I sort of took a step back. And by my third round, basically, it was really tedious because because it was a different nurse every time. But every time I would say, please don't tell me the number. Please don't tell me if it's gone up or down.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was just a little thing, like a little step that I could take to just do something about it and recognize those patterns. And
Yeah.
because I like don't want to go back there again. That was something that didn't serve me. That was
Yeah.
something didn't that didn't make me feel good. That was something that, you know, and ironically, technically by society standards, that was when my body looked the best it's ever been. And
Because it was the lightest.
I was the most unhappy.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, and so yeah, you know, like you said, one of the solutions is that I'm going to therapy for it, and she's given me a lot of like tools and things like that. But again, that's only come from being open to challenging my own beliefs, and that's come
mm,
from the work that we've done,
mm, mm,
because it goes so much deeper than, you know, doing your steps and getting
mm,
your water in and blah blah blah. That's not what coaching about is about, or at least that's not what your coaching's about.
mm. Yeah. 100%.
And oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Is what I forgot.
Well, even just, being in that position to say, I don't want to know the number,
Yeah.
is something really powerful, and I think, you know, a lot of the time, people come to, coaching thinking, oh, I'm going to lose a certain amount of weight and I'm going to be really happy. And then actually they kind of, if they're doing it right, they get, 3 months in, 6 months in, and they're like, oh, wait, this is like not, this is so fucking different. Do you know what I mean? And it really is like my biggest passion comes from, my own challenges. And that is, empowering women, empowering women to advocate for themselves, however that looks like. That could be within your workplace, that could be in your fucking health, saying, no, I'm not right. And I want you to do some digging and figure out why I'm having this symptom. It could be within your relationships, setting boundaries with people, leaving toxic relationships. Like all of this comes from, taking back your power and advocating for yourself,
Mm.
and that is, the biggest part of what I'm passionate about and what I hope to achieve with my coaching. The weight loss, the body changes are a byproduct of that internal change. And the thing is with you, Alex, your body, has changed, but you have the tools and you have the knowledge and you have the mindset to nourish yourself to a place where you are the best version of yourself, and you are the best version of yourself now. You're always the best version of yourself, and your body will change as a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is a new version of myself, and
Mm.
like now I have to be the best version of this self. Like, it's almost like I feel like an onion at the moment. Like I've
Because
got
you got layers.
lots of layers, and I feel like I'm sort of emerging, and it's like, okay, now this is the new Alex. Like this is the new onion, and that empowerment that you speak about has been like more than ever during this cancer journey.
Mm.
And like I've had to do a lot of sort of internal misogyny unworking
Mm.
rewind,
Yeah.
um, because like every time I make a fuss, I almost feel like I'm taking up too much space, or like, oh, now she's the cranky whiny bitch. And it's like, no, you're not. You're just advocating for yourself. You're just, because I have seen it. Like my nan, bless her, she, every time she would go into hospital, um, you know, she'll be taking medications, and I'll be like, okay, what's this for? And she's like, I don't know. I just take it because the doctors have asked me to.
Yeah.
I was determined going into this that I wasn't going to be like that.
Mm.
So, I would go in, and I remember this nurse tried to come and take my blood, and I was like, what are you taking my blood for? And she said, oh, we're doing a transfusion. And I said, okay, but why are we doing a transfusion? I spoke to the doctor earlier, no one's mentioned to me about a blood transfusion. I know they can be quite dangerous. I'd rather not do that if I don't need to. And she was like, we've got to do it. And I was like, you're not taking my blood. I was like, you're not doing it because no one's spoken to me about it.
Yeah.
Actually, the doctor came round to me later and said, actually, you don't meet the threshold for a blood transfusion. Your like your red blood cells are a little bit low, but they don't meet the threshold. So I'm glad you said no. The doctor said to me, I'm glad you said no, and we can actually just get away with doing an iron infusion instead to give you a bit more iron into your blood.
Fucking hell. Like that right there, guys, is why you advocate for yourself and why you ask the questions. Fucking hell. Yeah. I'm
Yeah, so
so glad you did.
but that you've got to ask the questions. You can't just be a mindless robot who just says yes to any authority, because if that happened, nothing, we would
Yeah.
never have any change ever.
Yeah. And
And
you're so educated about this. You've sat here and you've said, the type of cancer, and you've explained the cells and things like that. So I can tell you've been asking the questions and you've been learning, and
yeah,
like rightfully so, because it's your body, it's your body. It was your cyst, it was your cancer, and you know the ins and outs of it. And that as well is empowering.
I mean, I almost feel like an emotional connection to my cyst now. Because I feel like it was protecting me,
Mm,
as much as it was a pain in the arse. Well, technically a pain in the ovary for
yeah.
such a long
And the
time.
back, the sciatic.
For such a long time, I feel like it was protecting me, or it was trying to tell me something. It was leading me towards this big crescendo, I guess, but it was trying to tell me something. It was my body trying to say, please, like, listen to me, fight for me, because something's not right here.
Mm.
And I mean, partway through my chemo, I had a weird symptom. I've said TMI a lot of times on this, but I've now
Never
learned that.
TMI, just say it.
So partway through, I started lactating, and obviously
That's interesting.
I'm not pregnant, and so I was like, what the hell? Um, so I went to my doctor about it, and they were like, don't know, never heard of that symptom, gonna, like, I'll look it up for you. They didn't, but the nurses sort of then just sort of went, oh, just any weird symptoms, just say it's the chemo. Like it's probably the chemo. It's probably the chemo. So I did a bit of research, and I then went back to my doctor and I went, can you really look into this, please? Because actually, this is saying that if you're lactating when you're not supposed to, that could be breast cancer, that could be a cancer in the pituitary gland in the brain. I was like, I need this like under investigation, please, because I
Mm.
don't want to be told I've got another cancer.
Mm.
And actually, it turned out that it's a side effect. It's an uncommon side effect, but it is a side effect of some of the anti-sickness medications that I was taking
Oh.
or that they prescribed me on.
Yeah.
And they were like, but that with a combination of that and also you then coming off the pill and your hormones being all over the place. Yeah, they've done like brain scans and breast scans and things like that, and they've said it's not cancer, it's not those cancers. But I'm glad I like pushed for them to research it because it could have been something more serious,
Yeah.
and they were just going to say, oh, it's just the chemo.
Yeah, well, they should know as well. If they're giving you a medication, they should know the side effects of that medication. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
such an interesting one. And
yeah.
I went to the doctors like not too long ago actually to get some scans on my boobs because I was still like lactating like after I had Bear. Like Bear stopped breastfeeding like 2 years ago. And if I pushed, I could still like get a bit of milk.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do I, it'd been years and I was like, oh shit, maybe I should, and one day I was just like feeling my boobs and I felt like thicker, like I thought I felt a lump and I
Mm.
was like, oh shit. And like went and got checked like as quick as I could and again like advocated for myself. Like I went to my GP and she had a feel and she was like, yeah, there's definitely like thicker tissue here, but it's not a lump, but it's thicker tissue, but it could be where you're at in your cycle. So wait a whole cycle and then we'll come back. And I gave it a week and I was like, I'm not willing to wait 3 other weeks. Like I need to know now. I'm not willing to wait. And I called them again and I said, no, I want to be seen. And they did. And I went straight to Crawley Hospital, I think, and went to yeah, like got someone to have a look. They did a scan and like the doctor, he was lovely and he was just like, I can completely understand your concerns. You got a little boy, I'm glad you came in. And I was like, yeah, like 100%. And it's all fine and everything. But again, it's like I advocated for myself. I wasn't willing to wait a cycle. Like, bear in mind, I've gone through a very challenging 6 months. The thought of then, maybe having something wrong with me, I was like, no, I'm not willing. I'm not willing to keep myself in that limbo. So I was like, no, I want to be seen. And again, it comes with advocating for yourself,
Yeah.
which is so fucking important. Um, if there was, a message or a couple messages you would like to convey to the people listening, I'm sure, everyone's struck gold with, parts of this podcast and resonated with parts. But if there was like a couple big takeaways that you've had from this experience, what would they be?
I think first of all, it would be humble yourself because it doesn't matter how fit you are, how how much you work out, how many vegetables you eat, whether you eat processed foods or not, what supplements you take, whatever. Okay, life has its way, and it doesn't have to be something as big as cancer, but life has its way of saying fuck you every so often. Um, so, don't be so arrogant to think it's never going to happen to me. And that doesn't mean live your life in fear that something bad's going to happen. That doesn't, and again, it doesn't mean that, I'm saying, oh, you're going to get cancer. Like, um, but it could be something like a breakup or, there are these shitty parts of life, you know, breakups, people passing away, that's always, unfortunate. Um, and I think to think something like that's never going to happen to you is frankly quite arrogant because
Mm,
life is always going to have its twists and turns. Which brings me on to my second takeaway, which is okay, so how do you prepare for that? Does that mean that you live in fear? Does that mean that you give yourself generalized anxiety disorder, thinking about all the terrible things that could happen to you tomorrow? No. What it means is it means you need to come up with a system, a modality, a mindset, or something to help you be more resilient to change and be more open to change, um, and therefore be able to deal with it when it comes.
mm,
And dealing with it doesn't mean ignoring it or doesn't mean not processing it, but dealing with it means being able to stand back up on your own 2 feet and then carry on moving through the path of life. So I
mm.
think definitely number one, be humble, and number two, prepare yourself.
Yeah. Become a tough ass bitch so you can handle the challenges. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And like I said, that doesn't mean living in fear of these challenges, because they are inevitable. That's part of C part one, be humble.
Mm,
But it's about actually how can I handle this in the best possible way?
hmm
Okay, the best possible way for me to handle this is to cry my eyes out, or the best possible way for me to handle this is to go to therapy, or the best possible way for me to handle this is, you know, to get myself healthy, to quit smoking, or whatever it might be. The best possible way for me to handle this is to be really fucking positive
mm,
and let's see the silver lining.
mm. Beautiful. I love it. Amazing. Oh my God, that was such a powerful, powerful conversation. Tell everyone where they can find you if they want to share your journey. I see your TikToks popping off, girl.
That was very unexpected. Yeah. I sort of went like mini semi-viral on TikTok. So my TikTok handle is Alex Hill 43. Apparently, Alex Hill 1 through 42 were taken. Alex Hill 43 on TikTok. I share my cancer journey on there, and I'm happy to answer any questions on there about my cancer journey. I would share other socials, but I don't post much, and I
Mm.
don't post anything about what we've talked about today. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, you heard it here first, guys.
on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And yes, go follow Alex and yep, slide into her DMs. If you enjoyed this episode, then as always, share on your stories, but don't forget to tag us. The DMs are always welcome. And yeah, if anything, I hope this, empowers you to kind of advocate for yourself and, trust the journey of life we're all on.
Absolutely.